Hey guys, so chapter 1008 of One Piece entitled Ashura Doji, Head of the Mountain Bandits just came out and well, as soon as I heard that title, I had had a hunch about what was going to happen in this chapter, and I ended up being right in that hunch. Because the Odin that we saw at the end of last chapter turned out to be Kanjuro, and in my last review of chapter 1007, I thought it would be Onimaru. That's the person I singled out. But obviously, I recognized that it could be Kanjuro too. And over the 2 week period, because we obviously had a break last week, I actually sort of was starting to lean more toward Kanjuro because I heard a lot of other fan theories, and it seemed like to me Kanjuro was the better option for a number of reasons. Particularly because the initial reason I didn't really think it was Kanjuro was because Kanjuro would probably be able to draw Enma and Amino Habakiri, which he did not have those swords. But somebody pointed out that Kanjuro obviously knows that Enma has, or sorry, Zoro has Enma, and Tengiyama Hitetsu has Amino Habakiri. So he would know, obviously the Scabbards know this as well, and choose not to draw it. So that makes sense to me. But yeah, it does turn out to be Kanjuro's drawing of Odin here. And we start off the chapter pretty much right where we left off. And all of the Scabbards obviously have their shock reaction, except for two who are much more reserved on this, being Raizo and Ashura Doji. Ashura Doji being the first to speak out, saying this is obviously could not be Odin. And Kinemon is obviously still in disbelief. And he's like, oh, he's right here in front of us. How could this not be Odin? But Raizo then points out that because the Odin clone, or the Odin drawing, claims that he was flung into the future by Toki's power. And Raizo points out that Toki said you can only go into the future, and you can't go to the back to the past. And he knew that he died that day. So it definitely could not be Odin from before his actual death. And the Grand Line Review, actually, if you're familiar with that channel, another One Piece channel, actually had a good theory on that, which initially, if it was actually Odin, I definitely would not have liked that, but he actually had a pretty good way of rationalizing where some situation where Odin could have gone into the future where we see him now and then gone back. So he helped with the raid, but had to go back in time with the knowledge of what happened. That's how he was able to give Toki was able to give a prophecy, and also Odin kind of died with the knowledge that he had to die in order to keep the timeline how it goes, which is I think definitely would have added more drama to his flashback in retrospect rather than taking away from it, which him being alive just normally after his execution would have. But yeah, in any case, that obviously doesn't end up happening. It is just simply a ink clone, which is probably, I think, is probably best case scenario. Even though I liked Grand Line Review's theory regarding that, I think this is definitely best case scenario. Especially because Ashura Doji pushes Kinemon out of the way as we see Odin, or the fake Odin, draw one of the swords. And Ashura Doji gets a hit on Odin's face, cutting and revealing that there's no blood. It's just kind of like a pie slice in his face or something like that. But then Ashura Doji proceeds to get impaled by the fake Odin, which, yeah, I forgot where I saw it. One person said it was probably going to be a situation where Kanjuro would betray, or would, stab, well, not betray because you already know he betrayed, but stab one of the guys upon with this ink clone, which I thought was best case scenario for me personally, because a lot of people were throwing around the idea. people who use like the Kanjuro thing immediately assumed that Kanjuro was a good guy again, or like he changed his ways, or he was like just so psychotic enough that he in this scenario would have somehow turned back to the good side, which I never really got. I thought if it was Kanjuro, it would make more sense for him to be tricking them to get closer and try and kill a scabbard or two, which did end up being the case. And I forget where I saw it, but somebody also had the same idea and said that it would probably be like a squad situation, which I think is a good comparison because it's pretty much the same thing. Go up and stab him through the chest like a squad did with Whitebeard in the Paramount War. So that person got it right on the money, actually. So good for them. I wish I remembered who it was. But in case, yes, Ashidoji gets impaled, he's still alive at the moment. And, the encoder reveals that, yes, it is I, Kanjuro. And Kiku Nojo actually goes up to Ashidoji as he's lying on the ground, and he says, like, I'm sorry, because I was the one who, was meant to take care of Kanjuro, because she was the main one fighting him. We saw that she was the last one to cut him down when we cut back to the fight after it had already happened. And Ashidoji says, even the sharpest sword becomes dull when pointed at a friend, which I think is a good like rationale for why Kanjuro is alive, I guess. Because obviously the Oda's notorious for overusing like resurrections, and even though this is kind of something little, I guess it is a good explanation as to why Kanjuro is still here. And Kanjuro actually does say that his death is inevitable, like that he will die before the end of the night, that he's mortally wounded, and that he's trying to take out as many like people as possible before he does. So I guess he will die no matter what. But he seems to imply that he's going after Momonosuke-sama, as Denjiro points out. But in any case, as he's doing this, we see Kanjuro running through the hall briefly. But cut back to the scabbards and Oden. Oden reveals that he has dynamite underneath his clothes, and then Ashidoji grabs him, jumps through the wall, and falls down with the bomb, leading us to believe that he has died, or is at least mortally wounded, or definitely out of the fight, even in the case that he is survived. I would personally prefer if he's dead, just because I think, a raid where you're going up against two emperors at once should definitely have some consequences. I definitely think some deaths should happen here. And particularly the scabbards, a lot of them have been having death flags. So I think if Ashidoji is dead, I think that would probably be beneficial. And we do sort of see his body on the ground, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. But yeah, it looks like the way it's shaded, it looks very like darkened, as if to like censor gore or something. Which at first glance gave me the impression like, oh shoot, he's like straight up dead. But then again, it could be just a stylistic thing, I guess, for lack of a better word. And he could still be alive, obviously. Don't necessarily trust that he's dead just yet. But something I particularly like about this scene is Kiku's reaction, because we already saw in the scene earlier with that brief interaction with Ashidoji that she blames herself for Kanjuro, sorry, still being alive, and the way Kiku's facial expression is drawn in reaction to seeing Ashidoji lying there, I think is actually just a really nice drawing. Definitely, even though it's pretty small, I think it's probably one of, if not my favorite panels for the chapter, which is saying something, because as we'll get into later, there are some pretty cool panels later on. But with that, Jack shows up after he revealed he was going there in 1005, I believe. Yeah, I think that's when he said he was going there. But he's finally here. And he reveals that he killed a few, or killed or at least injured a few minks on the way that were trying to be the last line of defense before their dukes. But something really interesting that I was not expecting is that Inuarashi stays behind as the rest of the vassals go, particularly targeting Nekomamushi and Raizo and saying, "Go ahead, I'll hold them here," which obviously because they were both on so they have closest ties to Jack. But I guess the reason this is, to me personally, this seems like a death flag. It seems to me like Arashi's going to die in this battle, or at least lose it. And the only reason I think that is because Nekomamushi and Inuarashi seem like a package deal to me. We don't like when they're together, they usually fight together. That's like the kind of like vibe I've been given to them, off of them, and the fact that specifically, even if it was Nekomamushi and Inuarashi win, I'd still have the same view. But specifically that one of them stayed to fight Jack, it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a bad idea. It just kind of like a death flag, or a sign that he'll probably lose. Because he's already seen that in their base form, that one of the, either Nekomamushi or Inuarashi is roughly equal to Jack. So, and they're obviously both injured already to a similar degree, so they could still be roughly equal. But I don't know, I just sort of get death vibes from Inuarashi here. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But yeah. In any case, I won't dwell on that too longer because we get the next scene of the chapter, where Orochi is revealed to be alive, and he is setting fire alongside Fukurokujo, to the festival hall, to get back at Kaido. So I pretty much thought the entire time that Orochi was still alive. I never really doubted that. Obviously, I was believing it less and less as we went on, because he got his head cut off in 985, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously we made it till 1007 without Orochi, so that's what, 22 chapters, sorry. So yeah, it was starting to seem like more and more like, that seems like a long time to be out of the picture for a guy who's still alive. But no, he's still alive, and Fukurokujo is aiding him in his endeavors. But yeah, what was weird to me is how like kind of casually it is. Like it's not even, it's just over half a page, more like 2/3 of a page, I guess. Because the first third of the page is still dedicated to Jack and Inuarashi facing off, and then the second 2/3 are is Orochi and Fukurokujo setting fire to the festival hall. So yeah, it was just kind of strangely presented to me. I was just like, well, okay. But I'm definitely glad he's alive, but well, not glad he's alive. I'm definitely, it just seems natural that he would still be alive. The fact that he had a multi-headed devil fruit, and his specific way of dying was getting his head lopped off. It just seemed like only natural that he would still be alive. Especially since we kept cutting back to his head. I think we just saw it, Oda just gave us one-off panels of his head just lying there on multiple occasions, which seemed to imply that something was going to happen to it. And we even saw Hote of the Mimawari Gumi notice as Fukurokujo left the festival hall, and we hadn't seen him since. So we kind of got the impression that he might have been up to something in relation to Orochi, especially since he seemed to be Orochi's most loyal follower. But yeah, I'm interested to see what his role is, because in the 20-something chapters that he was out of the picture, I realized how little we needed him here. Like getting him out of the way and being able to focus fully on the beast pirates, which are the real actual main threat here, was kind of nice in a way. So I'm interested to see like what like narrative purpose Orochi still being alive will serve. Possibly an opponent for the rest of the vassals, because I don't know who else they would fight, other than, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, that just seems like the best option to me. But in any case, we get another short scene with Momonosuke, Hiyori, and Shinobu. A few interesting things here. Momo's back in his normal form, explaining to Yamato that the way his thing works is whenever he's like anxious or stressed or startled or something like that, he usually pops into his dragon form, which is beyond his control. But Yamato remarks on how it's similar to his or her, whatever, his father's power, which kind of adding to what what Cypher Pole Zero said last chapter regarding the fruit, which I'm hoping is building up to something, possibly Momonosuke sort of being able to access some of the abilities that Kaido's fruit might have, and maybe being able to actually make a significant difference here, which I think would be good for his character. Especially since last chapter he was remarking about how everybody is praising him, when in reality he really is doing nothing, and so he's definitely looking for a way to help out. So this seems to be setting up possibly a way for him to do that. But he also, an interesting remark that he makes is that he knows Luffy's status. Like he says that he's worn out, but he's high spirited as ever. Which seems to imply to me that he's using the voice of all things, because we obviously know he has that. I don't think this is observation haki. It would seem kind of random to just kind of suddenly be like, oh yeah, he has observation haki, when we already know he has voice of all things. Especially since I'd imagine, well, never mind. But yeah, I mean, maybe even voice of all things is like a rare or advanced application of observation haki. It probably is. It seems just like the natural way to spin it. But with that little remark about Luffy, we cut back to Luffy and the rest of the supernovas at the top of Onigashima, continuing their fight against the emperors. We see Luffy charging in and getting bounced back multiple times. But in any case, an interesting thing that they all remark on is the fact that they might need to split them up. At the very least, Law, Kid, and Zoro seem to be all on the same page that splitting them up might be the right way to go. Which, I'm interested to see what what those groups would be. I'm tempted to say Luffy and Zoro versus Kaido and the rest versus Big Mom. But at the same time, I feel like everybody here, with the exception of maybe Luffy, has like more a bigger grudge against Kaido than they have Big Mom. So I'm interested to see who will, like, I could easily see any of them being the ones that face Kaido, but I'm interested to see who would be divided to fight Big Mom, even if that is assuming that their plan to split them up even ends up happening. It very well might not. But with that said, we get to the reveal of Kaido's hybrid form. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any complaints. I like it. Pretty reminiscent to me of, I want to say, like Rob Lucci's hybrid form. Just like the build is very similar. Kind of that like top heavy type thing with like the animal legs that are like, how like animal legs bend. They're kind of like bent backwards, sort of. He has that sort of thing going on. Yeah. I had nothing else to really say on it. But yeah, it looks good. I like it. And yeah, we get the final scene of the chapter, which is kind of like a mirror panel between Kaido and Luffy, which is really cool looking. Actually, I really like that panel with Luffy in particular. and he remarks how like uh, Kid says the facing these two together is like hell. And since we saw Luffy getting going in and getting bounced back, he's like, I've been to hell and back quite a few times now. And Kaido seems to be starting to respect that Luffy isn't like um, isn't backing down at all, and that his fire hasn't left his eyes or whatever. So yeah, it seems like the battle is starting to ramp up pretty soon. Just a side note, I feel like this is probably we've got to be getting really close to the end of Act 3 at this point. Especially with the potential of Ashura Doji being dead. I think probably the death of a scabbard or two could probably be that moment of tragedy we're looking for before the act ends off. Assuming whatever. But yeah, that's the chapter. So yeah, I like this chapter a lot. I think just the amount of things that had like significant buildup and were revealed in this chapter. Kandro and Orochi still being alive, revealing the shadowy figure. Oh, I should actually say that the fact that it was Kandro means that means to me personally that either Hiyori or Toki is here. Because obviously we know Kandro is still evil, so he wasn't that wasn't a separate ink clone like that was helping them earlier, because we know that the silhouette that we saw is most definitely female, or at the very least very not Oden-esque. So we can pretty confidently say that was probably a different person helping them. So we still don't actually know who the silhouette is. But yeah, and Kaido's hybrid. But yeah, lots of good stuff. I really like this chapter. Probably, probably one of the best in a while, and that's really saying something because I've liked a lot of these chapters. Like the Robin chapter was brilliant. Um, but yeah, with that being said, I think that's about all I have to say. So see ya.